marketing folder yet, which is my bad. Sorry. Okay, we're live. Welcome. It is Tuesday, January 28th, and we are right here in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. And we're going to begin this week. We have a really full and interesting week. But we're going to begin it with some of the best numbers we've had in a while. It was wonderful to have breakfast listening to the news on Vermont Public. The update from the Heather Palomar, Commissioner of Marketing and Tourism, and something else maybe I'm forgetting. She'll introduce herself, but it was great to begin the morning with your update and the good news you had. So we have you here to follow up on the report that you weren't able to finish and conveniently to update us.
Yes.
So welcome. It's wonderful to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to be here. For the record, Heather Pelham, Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing. And I'm so glad that you could start your days. If folks didn't see the news, we can have these looking start. Yes, on page 9 of the presentation that I didn't get through last time, but it does include the updated numbers. And that is to say that we were able to finally complete a really comprehensive economic analysis of the visitor economy. So these are the numbers for 2023. We have not been able to look as closely at the sector like this in many years. Previously, there was an economist who worked for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development who would do benchmark studies for us. Ken, yes.
What happened to Ken?
He retired.
Oh, well, now he can fish full time.
We missed Ken, but we were happy that we were able to contract with Tourism Economics, a leader in the field, both in their division of Oxford Economics, so they do a lot of economic impact work, but also specifically within the travel and tourism space. They were able to look at data from all different sorts, and we now have new visitation numbers. So we can now say that in 2023, 15.8 million visitors came to Vermont. An amazing number. We have not had exact figures, and I should take that with a grain of salt. It's not like we have a counter at the border, but we use the most modern techniques to be able to estimate visitation. Previously, we had said 13 million coming a year, and that was from back in 2017. So you can see in the chart that we are at where we were pre-pandemic. A slight dip from 2022. We won't really know, I don't think, until we see the 24 numbers, whether that was perhaps due to impact from the flooding in 2023, or we know that there was so much pent-up demand for travel post-pandemic that we would expect it to soften a little bit, and that's anecdotally what we've heard.
I have the impression, but you can disabuse me of it, that there's a shift from traditional hotels towards more of these Airbnbs and VRBOs. Is your data collection methods adequately adjusting for and capturing overnight stays and in those shared economy components?
We do include that data in the analysis, okay. Yes. So we're able to look at both tax data. We're able to look at, we do purchase data from Key Data, which looks at short-term rentals, vacation rentals. Smith Travel Research, STR, another acronym very similar that brings us hotel data. So we're able to look at that, and we're also able to look at that in the percent from other data sources, the percentage of folks who stay with friends and family versus stay in hotels versus stay in vacation rentals. So all of those are taken into account. We can always learn more. I can talk a little bit more about a visitor survey that we're doing to be able to get more precise numbers on where folks stay when they stay here.
So may I tag on to Tom's question, which is, how do we know their reason for coming, or do we not care? They're just coming to us from somewhere else. And is there reason? Do we include weddings and funerals and reasons people are here that aren't really kind of active tourism? Or do we just include everybody and entrance? Tell us what data goes into this.
Sure. So this data at this level is not getting into motivations. It does break down, as you can see, between day visitors and overnight visitors. However, we do want to know why people come. So we have engaged in a different research effort, which is a year-long visitor survey that we started in October of this year, and will go all the way through October 2025. We have some preliminary results from that, but because we didn't get the full fall season, we're not publishing a fall seasonal report until next fall. But what we're looking at there is, why did you come here? So did you come to visit friends and family? Did you come for an event? Did you come just to relax? Did you come to, see a cultural performance?
How do you get them to fill out that?
So we do that through researchers. So we're working with a firm called Downs and St. Germain. They have survey takers, they're intercept surveys. So we have them, I would say, stationed around the state. We have them in about 30 to 40 locations. They're not there all day, every day. They might be 3 hours at Billings Farm. They might be 2 hours up at Jay Peak. They might be, a couple hours on Saturday down at Vermont Country Store. So we're trying to hit different types of places that visitors would go. They might just go into downtown Montpelier. We're trying to spread folks out. So not only do we get an idea of where they're traveling throughout the state, but the types of places where we might quote unquote catch them. So that's an ongoing effort. We have done outreach throughout the community to find, locations where these in-person survey takers can be. The survey itself takes about 15 minutes. We also have an ability for folks to take the survey online. So we've been distributing table tents that, say a lodging property can put on their check-in counter, or at a store.
Or they could just give to them.
Or they just give them, we give out postcards as well. So folks can follow that QR code and they can also take the survey online. Right. So we're hoping that fills in some gaps where we can't physically be. From that, we will get seasonal reports. All 4 seasons, and that will be rolled up into an annual report that we will have next fall.
Right.
So that should help illuminate, again, those motivations as to why people come here, not only for our own education, but then if we can help guide the industry in terms of product development, what do we need to look at for shoulder seasons, how are things changing, and so forth.
Yeah, Randy.
Does anything leap out from the surveys that you've done that this is a really great thing to do in terms of it brings people in like nothing else we do? Is there something like that?
I mean, it's very heartening when you hear just the free form comments. And they're glowing. And I think some of us take that for granted because we love Vermont. Why wouldn't somebody else? It's been interesting to see that through the eyes of the researchers who work for destinations all over the country. And they're like, yeah, this is really something. The emotion that people put behind their comments as to why they come here and how fulfilling they feel it is, how relaxing and welcoming, and just feels like they're living in a movie or in a postcard.
Well, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
a movie, as you know.
One of Randy's favorite.
I want into that.
And in fact, one of the things that we certainly have been talking about, and history tells us when the movies like Moonlight and Vermont was, back into the 40s and 50s were material. And the question is, we've had a number of Vermont movies made. Have you seen any relationship between that and comments from visitors?
I haven't seen that in the survey data yet. I think it's a great.
They've been filming in Vancouver, that's why.
Yeah. But I think there's still the association. So, there is that sort of brand halo effect, even if a movie is filmed elsewhere. If you say it's set in Vermont, we get that brand lift from that. I mean, there is definitely such a thing as, entertainment tourism, where if you want to go to the place where something was filmed, I think there is potential for that. That's one, yes. I think, but back in the 90s, yeah, there were some other ones. Yes, exactly. I think in terms of, I know that the Vermont Arts Council has a proposal to put forward around workforce development in the film and media space, and I think that's very appropriate in terms of how we can build the sector that then potentially we get more things filmed here.
Who's doing it?
Vermont Arts Council.
The Art Council.
Okay, yeah.
We're meeting with Sabina Haskell, our new executive director of the workforce strategy. David and then Tom.
Thank you, ma'am. So going back to Senator Brock's question, though, what's the best investment in marketing? Like, where do you see the most return, or can you figure out the fidelity of that investment? Like,
Just overall, what's most effective?
Yeah, what's reaping the return on investment? What's reaping the best investment for the various marketing programs that you're?
Yeah, it's still a little bit tricky, I would say, to compare them against each other, especially since we know that brand building, behavior change is the series of different touch points. So it's not necessarily likely that one commercial, one social post is going to necessarily move the needle.
Okay.
It's a cumulative effect.
It's a campaign.
Style wise.
Yeah, within
Senator Ron Hinsdale's point about
Giving me a lot of credit.
No, I am, I'm trying. It's, lifestyle versus academics versus skiing versus.
Right.
You could, you know, these are different categories. Are you like, do you have various campaigns?
We do. So, two things. One, we have a visitation campaign. We also have a relocation campaign, and I can get into the relocation campaign later, different motivation. As far as visitation, what we really focus on is repetition, right? So it's like, where can we get that frequency? Talk about number of impressions, how many times can we bring Vermont top of mind to somebody might be thinking of traveling. And then we also look at time with the brand. So when we think about storytelling and what it is like to really communicate the brand value that Vermont can offer, one of the reasons why we've invested more heavily in videos, we can actually tell a longer story. So I can go back to some previous slides I went on last time I was here, but both for summer and for our winter campaign, we've invested in a series of long form videos. They're each over 3 minutes long. And so when we see that those videos, for instance, for last summer, each of them have been viewed over 500,000 times. If you think about spending 3+ minutes with the brand, quote unquote, that's a lot more time for us to communicate what Vermont is all about than a digital display ad, a social post. Those tactics are still very important to what we do. But that's where we really see our opportunity to kind of move the needle, is to make sure that people understand more than we want to keep Vermont top of mind, but then we want to reinforce what that really means.
Well, you might get some input from businesses in the photo industry in Vermont. Are there things that they're asking you to do more than anything else?
They would love for us to have a very robust marketing budget. I can tell you that. You know, we work together in terms of making sure that we are able to, I would say, quote unquote, explain Vermont in terms of there's so many different opportunities and experiences that you can have. So we are spreading people around to a certain extent. You know, I think that the concerns of tourism businesses are very similar to the concerns of other businesses in terms of workforce challenges, you know, supply chain, cost of living, property taxes, and so forth.
I'm going to keep on tap.
Sorry.
We have you till 10:30. So I'd like to have you finish your presentation
Okay.
and let's ask.
Okay. Well, why don't we move to the next slide, which is what was in the news this morning, as well as the visitation numbers, which is the overall economic impact. So again, through this effort with tourism economics, we can now say that tourism is a $4 billion industry in Vermont. That is nothing to take lightly. Very proud of the visitor economy that we have here and how it has grown in a sustainable way. We're looking at 9.3% of the state GDP. I would also, it's not necessarily on the slide right here, but when we look at other states across the country, that statewide average is 3%. So if you think about then how important tourism is to our GDP compared to other states, it's a really important industry. It employs 10% of our workforce. You can see it's bringing in $282 million in direct tax revenue. And that's, when I say direct, this report does go into induced and indirect effects as well, which bring that number even higher. So I'm trying to be very conservative here in terms of like with this direct spending $282 million. And as we think about tax burden, that's over $1,000 per Vermont household. So if we were to have to replace that revenue some other way, it's absolutely very significant. We were also able to bring this economic impact down to the county level. That's the first time we've been able to do that. That's the full details of the report. We now will be able to do this going forward. So it's really given us a chance to dive into really understand exactly what we're seeing in the visitor environment.
The report. Which report?
Sorry, the full report that these numbers come from, which I can.
Which will say have a link to that full report. And Tom, did you have a question?
No, it's fine.
Okay, keep it.
Okay. So then I talked a little bit last time about, so if we think about our 4 main areas of focus for the department, destination marketing, the second destination development, then relocation marketing, and chief marketing office. So the second of that is destination development. This work has really been made possible from a federal grant that we received from the Economic Development Administration, post-COVID for recovery, travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation. If we go to the next slide, you can see how we have deployed those funds. Right there at the very top is some of this research that I've been talking about, both the economic impact study and the visitor survey. We're bringing that together in a data dashboard, so that that information is more accessible to folks who want to do their own research if they're thinking about starting business or otherwise want to see how it affects them. We are embarking on a brand study to kind of take a look at the Vermont brand. We have not done that a lot before, so I think some of these perception questions will be hopefully answered within that, in terms of, what do you think about when you think about Vermont? Does that change if you're a first time visitor versus you've come, every year for 20 years or whatever it may be?
What does that report do?
That report will be due at the end of the summer. And then I would say, very excitingly, this work also includes the destination management strategic plan. I think I mentioned briefly last time that we are holding a series of regional forums the week of February 10th. That's another opportunity for us to learn from boards and businesses as to really what's important to them and thinking about how we can sustain the industry going forward. Not only what our role should be, but how we can just shepherd the sector in general. So it's very exciting that we get a chance to do that work. We are also doing a BIPOC visitation strategy, which is really thinking about, how do we make, it's looking at both the travel trends for Vermonters and others of color in terms of what they see, what they would like to see in a vacation experience, as well as what potentially might be perceived barriers here in Vermont, and then thinking about what our messaging strategy can be. And we're doing a brand audit as part of that as well.
Okay, sure.
There are going to be some elements of this that we don't have control over, but I can tell you from the circles I operate in, people are starting to carry their passports. They are starting to just worry about, what they look like will impact where they can travel. And a couple bad headlines that implicate Vermont's cooperation or participation in that kind of interaction is going to have a dampening impact on all of that work. So, just something to be conscious of. In the past, I would say a decade ago, we had a working group that included tourism and law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if at some point it would be timely to bring that back. But there are a lot of people I know who are getting extremely careful about where they travel.
And that probably is true nationally, right?
That's true nationally.
That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just to Vermont.
No.
So I think it would be interesting though to check in with your national partners as to the impact of federal policy on and the dampening effect.
Yeah, it's interesting timing. Great adjective to be doing this work, and trying to parse out the impacts of, recent federal government actions in our work, but we are committed to this work. I think looking at that lens as to how perceptions of Vermont, if it's possible. I mean, it's hard to go back in time and say, what did you think 6 months ago? But we'll do our best to be doing this research both quantitatively and then qualitatively so that we can kind of tease out some of that information.
Great.
We are also working on some workforce development initiatives. Again, this is new ground for us. Kelly is here from the Vermont Agribusiness Alliance. I will let her speak to that, one of those pieces, but we also were able to help stand up the Hospitality Management Certificate Program at UVM, which is going to be a real boon to our industry in terms of getting folks ready for careers in hospitality. Then just very briefly, we were also able to use some of that money in terms of basically spreading the wealth in sort of T-term grants, is what we call them, transformational tourism events and regional marketing grants. If we go to the next page, you can see how those grants were spread out throughout the state. These were grants of up to $150,000 that we really wanted to see. Okay, we've had this chance to kind of blue sky thinking, what could we do with this money? We made that opportunity available to our partners to think about what would really move the needle for them. And the types of projects, if we go to the next slide, really range from both destination marketing efforts at some of our, regional DMOs to support for different events to destination development type projects, as I would describe them in terms of investing in the future for more to improve visitor experience going forward.
Quickly, Tom.
Very quickly, the previous slide is the point I want to make. I love Hello Burlington, and I don't know if you've looked at Bonjour Quebec, but those are places I go to find things to do. I'd love to see a Hello Vermont. So for anybody in Boston, New York, or otherwise, I don't know if that fits into your long-term strategy, but they're looking to spend the weekend up here, having one website which collects all of the different activities would be a great use.
Should have that.
We have that already.
Well, it's not called Hello Vermont, it's called Vermont Vacation, but that is our forward-facing website. We have a full events calendar, we have a business directory. It is where we have trip ideas, it is where we have all sorts of different resources to help travelers coming to the state.
Right.
Didn't come up with Google searches, so add Hello Vermont as another redirect.
Okay, fair enough.
Quick question. I noticed on the grantee growth organizations that you.
We're getting there.
We haven't gone,
We're getting there. Where she,
No, I'm just curious that there's nothing in Franklin County. I'm just curious as to why.
I'd be happy to, let me give you the overview first. Okay, so moving on to relocation marketing. So this is another priority of the department. Thankfully, we received increased base funding from this body 2 years ago to set up these programs. So we now have the GROW program, right, for relocation outreach work. This is really where we have learned from all of our work in the past that it takes a lot to convince someone to move someplace, right? It's not just a one touch point type deal. So we created the GROW program, which has 2 tracks, a relocation track and an outreach track. So if we look at the list of grantees on the next slide, this is where you can see that we did an RFP for this. So this was a competitive procurement in terms of which local organization might be best suited to do this type of work. Unfortunately, we did not receive a grant proposal from Franklin County. However, we are continuing to develop relationships. We also, so this is not we don't have the entire state covered. We did the first grant round was for 2 years, so we will be opening that up again in 2026. So hopefully we've done enough work between now and then that we can fill in any gaps that we have. But you can see that some organizations are doing both relocation and outreach. Some of them are just doing one or the other. The relocation track is really to take the leads from that we get through Think Vermont, which is our forward-facing website for relocation. So basically somebody raised their hand and say, yes, I'm interested in learning more. They fill out our form, which gives them just basic information so that we can push that lead down to the local level. And if you look at the next slide, this is where we are capturing that information in terms of how we are moving folks down the sales funnel. This is just year 1 of the program. Some of our organizations, let me just back up. So this is a 2-year grant program. So we were able to give them $75,000 a year. The reason for that, or one of the reasons for that, was so that they could build capacity to actually take these leads. So some organizations didn't actually fulfill that capacity until halfway through the year. But still, I find this very encouraging, not only that we are seeing that we are moving folks down the funnel, that they are moving here through the help of this program. This doesn't capture everybody, of course, but also that we now have this level of reporting. That's something that is important to us, and important to anybody else, so that we can, because we now have a formal grant arrangement, whereas before this work was being done on a volunteer level, we received monthly reports from our grantees that let us know exactly what they took for relocation. For the leads, we see how they move people down the funnel. For the outreach work, we get an understanding of the types of events that they've done. That can really range from, they've had a breakfast for new Vermonters and they've invited established community members to join as well, or perhaps they were at a community event that was just for everybody. Let's take the Rutland Winterfest that's coming up, do a table to make sure they're intercepting folks who might have just moved here so that they can make sure that they understand all that's available, so they're available in their communities and hopefully continue to be involved.
Is there a chart or any documentation underneath this showing how much each of these grant organizations receive?
I can provide that.
I'm interested because if I look at this and then, I look at some things I know you're going to talk about further, that there seems to be perhaps a relationship to who's going after people and who's getting them.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So the vast majority of folks are getting about the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Now, surprisingly, we offer
Franklin or Grand Isle, for example.
Right, and that was because we didn't
I understand.
receive a proposal from them, but again, we hope to be able to continue to have a formal relationship. It's not, I would also say that one of the nice things about this program is that grantees are really quite collaborative about this in terms of if a lead comes in and goes to St. Johnsbury and it finds out that Rutland is a better fit, they're happy to pull that lead, push that lead along. They're certainly going to push leads to the folks that we have relationships with in Franklin County. It's not as if they're somehow cut out.
And at some point when you come back, because I know we are time sensitive here,
Okay.
I would love to see where they're moving. Where are they choosing to move? Oh, it's coming out.
Right now.
You're-
Right now,
Okay.
on the next slide now, again, this is a subset of,
Oh, great.
all the folks that have moved here, but I would say to Senator Brock's point, one of the reasons why you'll see a concentration in Rutland County is because the Real Rutland program has been so established
Yeah,
for
really.
several years. They really have an amazing program, and I'm sure they would love to tell you more about it.
And I just need none in Franklin, Grand Isle, which obviously concerns me.
Well, it's, there's room for improvement. But I think what's interesting to see here is that folks are choosing many communities in Vermont, and they are coming from many different communities across the country. It's not as if they're all coming from the Northeast. It's not as if they're all coming from the Southeast. The research that we have in terms of when people tell us why they're moving, it's really about Vermont values. It's about quality of life. The beautiful scene that we are allowed to, live in, that we take advantage of is there and it's part of it. But really it's about wanting to live in a community where people feel loved. That's great. That's what our research shows. We are not resting on our laurels in terms of what we've been able to establish so far. So we now have the infrastructure set up with the GROW program, but we want to fill that pipeline. So this next slide shows some of our preliminary creative that we are working to finalize for a paid marketing campaign to promote moving to Vermont. The basic concept is playing on our brand, think Vermont. Well, so think community, think life, think family, think Vermont. So we are going to be rolling this out in the next few weeks. This is a campaign that we are targeting right now on the geographic markets of New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Tampa, so that we can have some ability to kind of look and see how our messaging reflects with different communities. Looking at both job seekers as well as remote workers. Again, we see sometimes people, I would say it's about half and half, as the people who come here who don't yet have a job or people who come here because they've been given a job offer. So we're excited to see how we can continue to fill that pipeline. And again, now that we have the infrastructure in place, we feel like the time is right to try and prime that pump.
I love this.
That's right.
No, this is so great.
And like
That last slide was me growing up in Los Angeles being like, why do people live this way? And it is now my parents who just moved here 5 months ago. But this is the exclamation point.
Right.
Just great.
It's great.
oh, yeah.
But this is a brand you started 4 or 5 years ago. Things
It's been a while.
But the
It's been a while.
exclamation point feels new.
It's been in our brand. We just haven't used it quite this way.
Okay, good
Yeah.
job deploying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So knowing that we are short on time, the next slide, the fourth part of our programming at the Department of Tourism Marketing is the Chief Marketing Office. So we have 2 folks in our department that comprise the Chief Marketing Office. Unlike the work that we do, which is very outward facing, the Chief Marketing Office is an inward facing resource for state agencies to receive marketing and communications expertise and support. You can see here on the slide the types of work that they do. It's really around management of the state of Vermont brand. So that's the Moon Over Mountains, literally the mark of the state, as well as contracting and procurement guidance when it comes to marketing services. We have, I think it's 22 now statewide marketing contracts that are available to state agencies to utilize for their outreach efforts. When capacity is very limited, when capacity is there, we can do some directory services as well through the Chief Marketing Office. And then I would say one of the major priorities in the last year and will be going forward is about accessible design. So really thinking about how do we make sure that all communications that are produced by the state are accessible to folks who might suffer any type of disability. And that includes not only thinking about someone looking at a report with a screen reader, but are we putting things in plain language? Are we making information just available period in channels where people can find it. So,
And then languages that people.
and in the language
Understand.
they, like translating them exactly. So also preparing for the implementation of the ADA rule coming in 2026 about new standards for accessibility and web communication. So the Chief Marketing Office has been working on a digital accessibility roadmap in terms of how to help state agencies get from here to there to fulfill the requirement
Right.
under that rule.
Great.
And then just in general, they've set up a bunch of different communities of practice in terms of making sure that we are supporting other folks within state agencies who have a outreach or communications role, quite distributed. So making sure that we are all learning from each other, we meet regularly, bringing in experts to make sure that we are a little continuous improvement
Exactly.
and training for communication side. So I think the rest of the deck is just some basic who our partners are. I don't think there's anything really overly notable there. Your sort of usual suspects. And then in terms of, our committee interactions, certainly with you folks and with appropriations. We show that we do have data now available on visitor volume, spending, different trends and so forth. So there is a tourism research page on our website, which we continue to build out if folks are interested in what data we have available. And then
Great. We have a lot.
buzzwords, that's who we are. And then I think the last slide is just some of those top numbers again, which we went over in terms of economic impact.
Thank you for finishing. We're going to go on break, but KJ, you have a question.
I hope this continues with the guests that we have at 10:45, and I hope you're here for it. I feel like I want us to have some kind of summit, or I want to know if there is one on tourism in the age of climate change. Just like how are we? Every destination is facing this. How are we telling the story that we take care of people and we are resilient and we recover quickly and we have snow and maple syrup? And,
Well,
how are we going to tell this story?
Well, that's
you've
really
really done it in a way. You did it after the floods. You did a whole campaign on bringing the people back, which
We are-
addressed a lot of that.
Yeah, we are able to, when we are faced with that, we are able to do those type of recovery campaigns. I would also, harken back to what I mentioned, we're doing this destination management strategic plan.
Mhm.
Destination stewardship is a big component of that. The regional forums, the regional listing sessions we're doing, they'll be kind of in that sort of SWOT analysis type format. We've done some preliminary work there. Clearly, climate change is a threat, which is why we're looking at what does product development look like on the solar seasons.
Right.
Or, we think about all the infrastructure and other parties that just take our ski resorts have done in terms of like year-round
Right.
visitation,
Yeah.
right? Like how can we be resilient?
Yeah.
So that whole strategic planning effort, there's a very large component
Right.
of that.
Well, and also what does EV charging look like
Yeah.
in tourist,
Yeah.
routes, and I know the person doing the donut shop EV charging station in Alberg, his mother used to be the welcome person for Alberg. I feel like it's a really cool story to tell, Aaron Vincelette. I just highly recommend we start to tell the story of Vermont being forward thinking about having a green economy and,
Well,
And finding the stories is great, so.
Yeah.
and it our relocation campaign as well,
yeah.
because we already, it trickles down that little funnel. We're going to have.
Alberg, I'll get you your tourism money.
Relocation. So, there's that halo effect. So our visitation campaigns also will, influence our relocation campaigns, right?
So-
The brand of Vermont is larger than all of us. And so again, people are
Exactly.
living and breathing and having those experiences in all sorts of different ways.
So thank you. We are going to have you back at some point soon.
Wonderful.
And you might be interested in our Small Business Wednesday tomorrow and just take a peek at what that involves.
Great.
Heidi can show you
I'll
that.
be happy to.
We'll be back at 10:45 with our outdoor recreation industry update, and we're looking forward to that. And thank